The sky over Geneva was a perfect, clean blue. In the main hall of the United Nations, the air was still and full of a quiet tension. The people in the room were waiting. They were diplomats, scientists, and soldiers from every nation on Earth. They all watched the central platform. Director Juan of the Global Technology Institute stood to one side. He was a man with gray in his hair and a calm face, but his hands, held behind his back, were tightly clasped. Today would change everything. He looked at the two young people beside him, his best minds. Jinwoo, an engineer, kept adjusting his glasses, his eyes fixed on the empty space where the gift would appear. Sumi, a physicist, stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable. A soft chime echoed through the hall. The air above the platform shimmered, like heat rising from asphalt. Then, with a sound deeper than silence, it arrived. The Korvax Dominion's gift was not what most humans expected. It was not a sleek ship or a glowing weapon. It was a large, bulbous object, about the size of a small bus. The surface was a dull, opaque crystal, like smoky quartz. Its shape was uneven, almost organic, with strange curves and ridges that seemed to have no purpose. It sat there on the platform, inert and heavy. It looked old. Beside it, another shimmer resolved into a figure. Ambassador Tavik of the Korvax Dominion was tall and slender. His skin had a faint metallic sheen, and his large, dark eyes reflected the room's lights. He wore simple, flowing robes. He looked at the humans with a polite, distant smile. People of Earth. Tavik's voice was smooth, translated perfectly by the device at his throat. The Galactic Korvax Dominion welcomes you to the greater community. You have shown great spirit in reaching your own moon and planets. Your progress is admirable. He placed a long-fingered hand on the crystalline object. As a gesture of goodwill and encouragement, we offer you this. It is a Model 7 Starlighter warp drive. It is the foundation upon which our civilization built its stars. It is a stable, proven technology. With it, you may begin your own first careful steps into the galaxy. The translation of his next words was careful, but the meaning was clear to everyone. Do not be discouraged by its complexity. It is a technology my people mastered over 300 of your centuries ago. Study it. Learn from it. We do not expect you to replicate its function for many of your generations. Think of it as a goal, a star to steer by. A murmur went through the crowd. Some heard a generous offer. People like Juan, Jinwoo, and Sumi heard something else. They heard a ceiling being placed above them. Jinwoo leaned slightly towards Sumi, his voice a whisper. They gave us a fossil. Sumi gave a tiny nod, her eyes scanning the drive's surface. A very advanced fossil. But yes, they are giving us their past and telling us it is our future. Director Juan stepped forward as instructed. He bowed slightly to Tavik. On behalf of all humanity, Ambassador, we accept this generous gift with gratitude and humility. It is a symbol of a new friendship. His words were perfect. His tone was warm. But as he looked at the dormant warp drive, his gaze was not one of humble thanks. It was the look of a man seeing a mountain that must be climbed, not worshipped. The pride in his people, a quiet, stubborn flame, flickered behind his eyes. He knew the young minds in his labs. He knew what they did with puzzles. Tavik's smile remained. We will leave you to your studies. Our communications channel will remain open for your basic questions. Do not tamper with the outer shell. It is for your safety. The energies inside are beyond your current containment abilities. With another polite nod, Tavik shimmered and vanished. The gift, the massive, ugly, beautiful lump of alien technology, remained. The event ended. Politicians made speeches. News networks broadcast images across the world, talking about a new age of peace and learning. For Juan, Jinwoo, and Sumi, the work began immediately. Under heavy guard, the Model 7 was placed in a huge, specialized transport vehicle. It was not flown. It was too precious, too unstable, and too heavy. It traveled by land and sea on a slow, secret journey to its new home. That home was the Didiak Research Precinct in Taejun. A new, secure facility had been built underground for this moment. It was called the Starlight Project Hall. Days later, Jinwoo and Sumi stood in the sterile white light of the hall, looking up at the drive. Under the bright lights, it looked even more strange. It was not shiny. It absorbed light. Instructions? Jinwoo asked. Juan stood with them, holding a data crystal the Korvax had provided. He slotted it into a console. A hologram appeared. It showed simple diagrams of energy input ports and a basic theory of subspace field generation. It was a user manual for a car that only explained how to turn on the radio and where to put the fuel. Nothing about the engine. This is all they gave us, Juan said, his voice tired. The theory is centuries ahead of us, but it's just theory. No schematics. No material breakdowns. No access points. Jinwoo walked up to the drive. He did not touch it. He circled it, his eyes missing nothing. The shell is seamless. No joints. No fasteners. It's like it was grown this way or formed in a single moment. Sumi called up scan results on a nearby screen. Every scan says the same. The outer layer is a uniform alloy our databases don't recognize. Density is off the charts. Our X-rays, muon scanners, everything just bounces off or gets absorbed. It's a perfect black box. They meant for it to be one. Juan sighed, the weight of the task settling on him. Ambassador Tavik suggested we focus on the output, on understanding the warp field it supposedly creates. He said the internal architecture is irrelevant for now. The word hung in the air. Irrelevant. Jinwoo stopped his circling and looked at his director. Sir, with respect, that is what you say about a tool you use without understanding. Not about the key to the stars. Sumi agreed. If we only study what it does, we are just users. We need to know how it does it. That is how we learn. That is how we build our own. Juan looked from Jinwoo's determined face to Sumi's calm, analytical one. He thought of Tavik's polite, condescending smile. He thought of the 300 centuries of Korvax history. Then we open the box, Juan said, his voice low and firm. But we must be careful. They think it is impossible for us. Let's use that. No announcements. No questions to their channel. We work in silence. We learn. He looked at the ancient, silent drive. They have given us a stone from their foundation. They think we will spend generations admiring its shape. I want you two to find out what it's made of. As Juan left the hall, the heavy doors sealing shut, Jinwoo and Sumi were alone with the artifact. The only sound was the quiet hum of the lights and the ventilation. Sumi finally spoke. Where do we even start? We have no tools that can cut it, no scans that can see inside. Jinwoo was still looking at the surface, at the seemingly random ridges and whirls. We start with what they ignored. They told us the outside is just a shell, a container. What if it's not? What if they have forgotten something about their own old technology? He pointed at a complex, swirling pattern near the base. It looked like decoration. Why put this here? On a functional piece of machinery? It serves no purpose in their manual. You think it's a clue? Sumi asked, skeptical. I think, Jinwoo said, it's a place to start looking. They see a finished product. We see a puzzle. And we are very, very good at puzzles. High above Earth, in a silent Korvax observation satellite, Ambassador Tavik noted the human activity. The drive was secure. The humans were scanning it as expected. He sent a routine report back to the Dominion. The gift has been delivered. The humans are studying the external properties. Projected timeline for basic comprehension, 50 to 70 of their years. Their curiosity is predictable. Their progress will be slow. He closed the report, confident. The humans had their mountain. They would chip at its base for a lifetime. The Korvax had no reason to look down. The Starlight Project hall changed. The humming of scanners was joined by new sounds. The sharp, bright sounds of human fabrication. A large area of the hall was sealed off with clear polymer walls, turning it into a clean room. Jinwoo and Sumi no longer spent all their time looking at the Korvax drive. They were now builders. Their design for the Haiti prototype was a strange mix of the familiar and the revolutionary. It looked nothing like the smooth, organic Korvax gift. On their screens, it was a collection of sharp angles and labeled boxes, connected by clean lines. Their first major decision was about power. The Korvax drive's beautiful crystal lattice was also its power grid. It was elegant, but it leaked energy constantly as that soft blue light. Light is energy we aren't using to warp space, Sumi said, pointing to their power schematic. We contain the plasma in magnetic bottles. We channel it through room-temperature superconductors. Zero waste. No glow. The materials they requested were not exotic by Korvax standards. They were the pinnacle of human material science. Carbon nanotubes, lab-grown diamond insulators, and new superconducting ceramics. They were things humans already knew how to make. The second decision was about structure. The Korvax drive was one solid piece. The Haiti was a series of modules like building blocks. If the field stabilizer fails, Jinwoo explained to a small team of assemblers, we don't replace the whole drive. We open this panel, unclip this module, and slot in a new one. He held up a palm-sized unit, a dense block of circuitry and crystals. It's less beautiful, but it means a ship can repair itself on a long journey. The assemblers, engineers from Korea, Germany, and Brazil nodded. They understood maintenance. They understood redundancy. The Korvax way seemed wasteful to them. The third and biggest change was the core principle. The Korvax method was a brute force punch. Human math suggested a different approach. We don't have their power to waste, Sumi told the theoretical team. So we cannot just hammer space-time. We have to be precise. Think of a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. A French physicist on the team, Pierre, frowned at his equations. A scalpel needs a firmer hand. The control systems must be infinitely faster to make a clean cut. Their system is slow, but stable. Exactly, Jinwoo said, stepping in. He brought up the Korvax navigation crystal cluster on a screen. Their control is here. The signal has to travel through all this crystal to reach the driver over here. It's fast, but it's a physical journey. Lightspeed delay inside the machine itself. He switched the screen to the Haiti design. We put the control processor right on the driver module. They are one unit. The signal is measured in millimeters, not meters. We can make adjustments 1,000 times faster. We can make the cut cleaner. Back in the main hall, the Korvax drive sat with its shell closed, a silent, forgotten teacher. But its lessons were everywhere. Every human decision was a response to it. Sometimes, Jinwoo would open the shell again, just to look. He wasn't looking for answers anymore. He was looking for reassurance that they were on the right path. The tangled, glowing interior now looked messy to him, not magical. It was a fossil of an old way of thinking. Weeks turned into months. The clean room buzzed with activity. The Haiti prototype began to take shape. It was not one thing but many parts coming together. It was much smaller than the Korvax drive, about the size of a small car engine. Its outer casing was brushed metal, not crystal. It had access panels and connector ports. It looked ordinary. That was the point. Director Juan watched the progress with a growing sense of quiet disbelief. The reports were clear. On paper, the Haiti was better in every way that could be measured. Efficiency, repairability, field initiation speed. But paper was not reality. The day came for the first integrated test. Not a warp test, but a power-up. The Haiti was mounted on a heavy test stand in a shielded chamber. Jinwoo, Sumi, Juan, and the core team watched from behind thick safety glass. Jinwoo gave the order. Initial power sequence. Engage. A technician pressed a button. The Haiti did not glow with a soft, beautiful light. A series of small, green status LEDs lit up on its side. A low hum filled the chamber, the sound of cooling fans and superconductors coming online. A monitor displayed streams of data. All nominal. Power at 10%. Sumi read out. 20. 30. All systems stable. No energy leakage. They took it to 50%, then 70. The Korvax drive at this power level would have been shining like a blue star, wasting that energy as light and heat. The Haiti just hummed, its surface cool to the touch. The energy was all going where it was supposed to go. Full system diagnostic, run simulation alpha, Jinwoo said. This was the test of the control system. A simulated warp jump was fed into the Hades brain. The response time was instantaneous. The data screen showed a perfect, clean curve of field generation. The Korvax manual showed a similar curve, but with a slow, lazy rise at the beginning, the time it took for the signal to travel through the crystal. The human curve was a sharp, perfect line. Pierre, the physicist, let out a low whistle. It is not just a little faster. It is a different category of machine. Juan turned to Jinwoo and Sumi. His voice was barely a whisper. You did it. You didn't just understand it. You refined it. Sumi shook her head, her eyes still on the humming, ordinary-looking box. We didn't refine it, director. We learned from it, and then we built something human. We built something that makes sense to us. The test was a complete success. But it was only a test of the systems. The real question remained, could it actually warp space? Preparations began for the first field test. It would be a tiny jump, moving a sensor pod just a few meters. But it would prove the principle. As the team celebrated with quiet handshakes and tired smiles. Jinwoo walked back into the main hall. He stood before the sealed Korvax drive. He played the old sound sequence. The segments slid back, revealing the ancient, glowing heart that he looked from the organic, tangled beauty of the Korvax drive to the clean, angular lines of the Haiti prototype visible through the clean room window. The Korvax had given them a masterpiece of art. Humanity was building a better tool. Ambassador Tavik's next call came in. His hologram appeared, smiling. We detect some increased power usage at your facility. Your simulations must be growing more complex. Sumi, standing in front of the closed Korvax shell, nodded. Yes, Ambassador. Our models are becoming very detailed. We are learning so much from the principles. That is good, Tavik said. Remember, the path is long. Do not be impatient. Your species has time. After the call ended, Jinwoo looked at Sumi. He thinks we're still staring at the first page of the book. Sumi looked towards the clean room, where technicians were preparing the Haiti for its real test. Let him think that. We're almost done writing our own. A deep cold spilled from the open heart of the Korvax drive. It wasn't the cold of ice, but the cold of empty space, of something that had slept in the void for a very long time. The beautiful, tangled mess of crystals and conduits glowed with a soft, stubborn blue light. Jinwoo and Sumi stood before it, not speaking for a full minute. The scale of the task was now visible. It was overwhelming. Sumi, Jinwoo finally said, his voice quiet. How do you take apart a cloud? She moved closer, her eyes scanning the interior. You don't. You map it. You understand its weather. She pointed. Look, seems like a mess, but there is logic. The glow is not uniform. Pulses. See? A slow wave from this central cluster out to those filaments. They began the long, slow process of mapping. They built a scaffold around the drive, allowing them to view it from every angle. They used lasers to measure distances between crystal nodes. They used thermal cameras to watch the flow of energy. They used spectrometers to guess at the materials. It was not engineering. It was archaeology. They discovered the first major difference between Korvax and human thinking. There were no separate parts. The crystal lattice was grown as one single piece. The metallic conduits were fused into it. Nothing was screwed, welded, or bolted. It was a complete, interdependent system. This is why they didn't give us schematics, Sumi said one day, her face lit by the soft blue glow. There aren't any. This isn't assembled. It's cultivated. Like a bone or a tree. Jinwoo was at a computer trying to model a small section. It also means there is no repair. If one crystal filament cracks, the whole section might fail. You replace the entire unit. That's inefficient, Sumi said. You throw away the whole engine? Not if you are the ones who make them, Jinwoo replied. If you can grow these things cheaply, maybe it's faster. But for us, he shook his head. We can't grow this. We don't have the seed. Their second discovery was about the warp field itself. By carefully feeding tiny amounts of energy into the input ports, they could make a very small, harmless field bubble appear for a split second. Their instruments measured it. The Korvax manual described a process of gentle subspace folding. But the human instruments told a different story. The field was not gentle. It was a brutal, focused hammer blow to spacetime. It didn't fold space so much as punch a temporary, tiny hole through it. The Korvax technology then used immense power to smooth out this violent action, to make the ride safe for their ships. It's like they use a rocket to drive a nail, Jinwoo said, staring at the data. They have so much power, they don't care about elegance. They just force it to work, and then use more power to hide the mess. Sumi agreed. They solved the problem of how long ago. They never went back to solve the problem of how better. This was the key. The Korvax saw the drive as a finished, perfect thing. Humans saw a process and they saw room for improvement. Director Huan visited them in the hall. He looked at the open drive, his face pale in the blue light. Can you put it back together? Probably not, Jinwoo admitted. But putting it back together isn't the goal, sir. Understanding it is. Huan looked worried. Tavik will call again soon. If he asks to see it, we will have to hide this, Sumi said. She looked at the 12 recessed segments. We can close the shell. The sound sequence works to open and close it. They practiced. The ugly sequence of tones made the segments slide back into place, merging seamlessly. To any camera, it would look like the original untouched gift. When Tavik's hologram appeared for his weekly call, the drive looked as sealed and mysterious as ever. Your progress report, Tavik asked, his tone polite and distant. Sumi stood calmly. We are making strides in theory, Ambassador. The energy-to-field ratio is fascinating. We are building models to simulate the stress on spacetime. This was true. They were building models but not to simulate the Korvax drive. They were building models to improve it. Excellent, Tavik said. Stay focused on the theory. The physical object is merely a demonstration. Do not waste your efforts on its guts. He gave a small, dismissive wave of his hand. That path leads only to confusion. After he vanished, Jinwoo let out a tense breath. He really has no idea we're inside it. He doesn't think it's possible, Sumi said. She walked over to the drive and played the sound sequence. The shell opened again, revealing the glowing interior. His people forgot how to open the hood. The work continued, deeper and deeper. They began to identify functions. This cluster was for power distribution. That web of filaments was for navigation calculation. A thick bundle of conduits was the main driver for the spacetime punch. They also found the inefficiencies. The power distribution system was beautiful but wasteful, shedding energy as harmless light, the soft blue glow they saw. The navigation system was incredibly fast, but it was physically separate from the driver. Data had to travel along slow crystal pathways. One night, very late, Jinwoo had a simple idea. It was so simple he was almost afraid to say it. He called Sumi over to his desk. On his screen was a basic human circuit design for a fusion reactor regulator. It was blocky, ugly, and used ordinary superconductors. Look at this, he said. Our regulator is not one grown piece. It's 10 separate modules. If one fails, we replace one module. It's not as beautiful as theirs, but it is more reliable. Sumi saw where he was going. You think we should not copy it? Copying it is impossible, Jinwoo said. We don't know how to grow fused crystal brains. But we don't need to. We understand what it does. We can build something that does the same thing. But we can build it our way. He pointed to the screen. We can use separate, specialized processors for navigation, right next to the driver. We can use our own superconductors for power, which won't waste energy as light. We can design a system that doesn't punch a hole, but slices a cleaner one. Sumi was quiet for a long time, looking from the messy, beautiful Korvax interior to the ugly, efficient human diagram. He's right, she said finally. Who? Tavik. Focusing on the guts does lead to confusion. A slow smile spread on her face. But confusion is just the first step before a new idea. If you only look at the theory, you just see what they want you to see. By looking at the guts, we see their mistakes. We see a different path. The goal shifted that night. They were no longer just trying to understand the Korvax drive. They were using it as a teacher, showing them what not to do as much as what to do. They began to design. Their design was not one beautiful, grown object. It was a collection of parts, boxes and lines and connectors. It looked crude next to the organic Korvax system. They used human materials, human computing, human manufacturing. They called their design Project Haiti, named for a mythical creature that sought out and consumed problems. It was not a copy. It was an answer. In his office, Director Juan looked over their first proposal. It was not a request for more tools to study the gift. It was a request for materials to build something new. He read the summary: increased efficiency, modular design, faster field initiation. He looked out his window at the night sky. The Korvax had given them a finished chapter of a book. His team was not just reading it. They were starting to write the next one. He picked up his phone to call the fabrication labs. The silent work was about to get much louder. The Starlight Project Hall became a world of its own. The massive Korvax drive sat in the center, silent and dark. Around it, human machines hummed and whirred. Scanners of every kind were brought in. They bathed the drive in waves of energy, from radio to gamma rays. The results were always the same. The outer shell absorbed or deflected everything. Jinwoo and Sumi lived in the hall. Their schedules were a cycle of work, short sleep, and more work. Cots were set up in a side room. The air smelled of coffee and ozone. Weeks passed. The initial excitement turned into a hard grind. They had mapped every bump and ridge on the shell's surface with lasers. It was perfectly smooth at a microscopic level, with no seams. It was as if the thing had been poured into a mold and then the mold had vanished. Ambassador Tavik's scheduled check-in call came once a week. A hologram of his upper body would appear in the hall. He always asked the same polite questions. "Have you made progress with the field theory?" he would ask. "The harmonic resonance of the subspace layer is quite fascinating. Is it not?" Sumi, who was usually the one to talk, would give a careful report. "We are studying the energy input parameters. The conversion efficiency is remarkable." She never lied, but she spoke only about the theories from the manual, not their attempts to open the box. Tavik would nod, his dark eyes seeming to look through her. "Good. Focus on the output. The internal architecture is a distraction. It is the result of thousands of years of refinement. Do not be discouraged if it seems like magic." After the call ended one day, Jinwoo kicked a tool cart in frustration. It rattled across the floor. "A distraction." He says it like we're children trying to take apart a clock to see where the tick comes from. Sumi was calmer, but her patience was thinning. He is not entirely wrong. The principles of the warp field are what we need. But we cannot trust a machine we do not understand. What if it has a failure mode we cannot see? What if it is designed to stop working if we go too far? "That's why we need to see inside," Jinwoo said, staring at the drive. "We need to know what we have been given." Their breakthrough did not come from a powerful scanner. It came from Jinwoo's obsession with the surface patterns. He had printed large photos of the drive's shell and pinned them to a wall. He would stare at them during his breaks, tracing the lines with his finger. "Look here," he said to Sumi one evening. They were both exhausted, drinking bitter coffee. He pointed at a series of whorls near the top of the photo. "This pattern, it repeats, but not exactly. It's like a sequence. It could be manufacturing marks," Sumi said, her voice flat, "or just decoration. The Korvax might have an aesthetic sense." "Maybe," Jinwoo said. He was not convinced. He had begun to think of the drive not as a machine, but as a message. A message that said, "This is too complex for you." The next day he had an idea. It was simple, almost silly. He remembered an old story about an opera singer breaking a glass with her voice. Resonance. What if the pattern is not a visual clue? He asked Sumi. What if it's an instruction? A pattern of vibrations? Sumi considered it. You think the shell responds to sound? Our scans show it's acoustically dead. It doesn't vibrate at all. We haven't tried the right frequency, Jinwoo said, or the right sequence. They used a high-precision audio emitter, a device that could produce very pure sounds across a huge range. They started with simple tones, directing the sound at the area with the complex whirls. Nothing happened. They tried pulses. Still nothing. Days of this led to nothing. Juan visited, his face lined with worry. The world's governments were asking for updates. The public was excited for news. All he could report was that they were still studying. Keep trying, Juan told them. His faith was a quiet pressure. But be ready to change course. We may have to accept just learning the theory. After Juan left, Jinwoo was more determined. He sat at his computer, looking at the digital map of the surface patterns. He wrote a simple program. He told the computer to read the pattern as if it were a graph. The peaks and dips of the whirls became numbers. What are you doing? Sumi asked, looking over his shoulder. I'm assuming it is a sequence, Jinwoo said. A sequence of notes. The computer translated the numbers into a sound frequency sequence. It was not a melody. It was a series of harsh, discordant tones that shifted rapidly. It sounded like noise. Jinwoo fed the sequence into the audio emitter. He aimed it at the drive. He took a deep breath and pressed play. A series of ugly, digital chirps and deep hums filled the hall. Sumi winced at the sound. Nothing happened on the drive's surface. The ugly noise finished. See? Sumi said gently. It was just a soft, blue light glowed from within the drive. It was faint, like a distant star seen through fog. It came from deep inside the crystal shell, right where the pattern was. The light pulsed once, in time with the last of the ugly tones, and then faded. Jinwoo and Sumi stood completely still. The only sound was the hum of the air circulators. Again, Sumi whispered, her scientist's mind snapping into focus. Play it again. Slower. Jinwoo replayed the sequence at half speed. The tones became long, drawn-out groans and high whines. Again, at the end, the inner blue light pulsed. But it was weaker. It's not the notes, Jinwoo said, his heart pounding. It's the speed, the rhythm. He played it at the original speed again. The blue light pulsed stronger. He played it faster. The light became bright, a fierce sapphire gleam shining from within the smoky crystal. It did not fade. It stayed. Then, with a sound that was not a crack but a deep, resonant click, like a giant lock turning, the impossible happened. A line, perfectly straight and hair-thin, appeared on the shell's surface. It cut right through the center of the whorled pattern. Then another line branched from it, and another. A geometric web of light etched itself onto the dark crystal. With a series of soft, sighing sounds, the solid, seamless shell began to move. 12 segments, each following the lines of light, detached and slid back. They moved smoothly without grinding or scraping, as if on perfect bearings. They recessed into the body of the drive, revealing what was inside. Jinwoo and Sumi stepped closer, their breaths fogging in the suddenly cold air pouring from the drive's interior. It was not a neat arrangement of parts. It was a jungle, a dense, three-dimensional tapestry of glowing crystalline filaments, throbbing with slow blue light. Metallic conduits weaved through it like roots. There were no wires, no circuits as humans knew them. It was alive with inner light, complex and tangled and beautiful. It looked less like an engine and more like the heart of some impossible frozen creature. The hidden manual release, forgotten by the Korvax who had stopped opening these units centuries ago. A secret door, opened not by a key, but by a song the builders had long stopped singing. Sumi reached out a hand, not to touch, but to feel the cold radiating from the interior. They didn't just give us their past, she said, her voice full of awe. They gave us a museum, and we just found the door. Jinwoo looked at the breathtaking, chaotic interior. The mountain was gone. In its place was a deep, dark forest. He felt no fear, only a fierce, hungry curiosity. Now, he said, the real work begins. High above, the Korvax satellite noted a small, unusual energy spike from the human facility, a resonance frequency not used in standard scans. The system classified it as minor, non-threatening acoustic testing. No alert was sent to Ambassador Tavik. The humans were just making noise as expected. The air in the deep underground test chamber was cold and still. It was a vault, lined with meters of lead and reinforced concrete. In the center, on a heavy pedestal, sat the Haiti prototype. It was connected by thick cables to the power source and by slender fiber optic lines to the control room. A simple metal sphere, packed with sensors, sat on a platform 1 meter in front of it. This was not a test of distance. It was a test of truth. Would the human machine actually bend reality? In the control room, Jinwoo, Sumi, and Huan watched the main screen. The team around them was silent, tense. All the simulations said it would work. The math was perfect. But math was one thing. Space was another. Final systems check? Jinwoo said. His voice calm, the technician's voice came over the speaker. Power systems, green. Superconductors, stable. Field containment matrix, charged. Navigation processor, ready. Safety interlocks, all active. Field is constrained to a 1 meter radius. If it fluctuates beyond that, it will shut down in 1 picosecond. Sumi leaned forward. Sensor pod is reporting. All normal. Director Huan stood with his arms crossed, his face a mask. He had staked his career and more on this moment. He gave a single nod to Jinwoo. Jinwoo took a slow breath. Initiate field generation sequence. 5% power for a 1 centimeter spatial translation. He pressed a key dot on the screen. Data streams scrolled. In the chamber, the Haiti emitted a low thrum, a vibration felt in the bones more than heard. The green status LEDs turned a steady, piercing blue. Around the sensor pod, the air shimmered. It was like looking through old glass. The pod itself seemed to blur for an instant. Then it was over. The Hades LEDs returned to green. The thrum faded. Report, Jinwoo said. Datsumi's eyes were fixed on her screen. Field generation, successful. Stable for 0.8 seconds. Power consumption was 42% below simulation prediction. The pod? Huan asked. Calculating spatial position. A pause. Then Sumi looked up, a stunned smile breaking through her professional calm. It moved. Exactly 1 centimeter on the z-axis. All sensor data confirms a clean, microscopic warp bubble. No residual spatial distortion. No harmful radiation. A quiet cheer went up in the control room. People clapped each other on the back. Jinwoo felt a rush of relief so strong, he had to put a hand on the console to steady himself. It worked. Their ugly, boxy, modular machine had just warped space. But this was just the first step. Over the next days, they ran more tests. 2 centimeters. 10. 1 meter. Each time, the Haiti performed flawlessly. The data was clear. The human drive was not just functional. It was precise. The warp bubble was clean, the edges sharp. It used energy with a miser's efficiency. Then came the real challenge. The jump test. They would attempt to move the sensor pod from one end of the 100-meter chamber to the other. This required more than a tiny bubble. It required a full but miniature warp jump. The power hum was deeper this time. The shimmer in the air was not a blur, but a rip. For a fraction of a second, the pod was not there. It was somewhere else. Then, with a soft pop of displaced air, it reappeared, perfectly positioned at the far target. The sensor data was breathtaking. The pod had not traveled the 100 meters. It had, for a fleeting moment, not existed along that path. It had taken a shortcut through the folded fabric of space. Jump time. 0.05 seconds, Sumi read, her voice filled with awe. The Korvax manual lists their minimum jump time for this distance as 0.5 seconds. We are 10 times faster on the initiation. Jinwoo was already thinking ahead. Their system is slow to wake up. Ours is always ready. It's the difference between starting a campfire and flipping a switch. That night, they held a small, private meeting in Juan's office. The Haiti prototype sat on the table between them, now cool and silent, just a metal box. We have to tell them, Juan said, but it was a question, not a statement. Tell who? Jinwoo asked. The Korvax. The world. Our governments. We have a warp drive. Sumi shook her head. Not yet. We have a prototype that works in a vault. We need a working model. One we can put on a ship. One that can be reproduced. We are not engineers of one miracle. We must be engineers of 1,000. Juan understood. Going public now would bring politics, demands, and most dangerously, the attention of the Korvax. What would Ambassador Tavik do when he learned that humanity had not only opened the black box, but had built a better one in less than a year? We keep it secret, Juan decided. We move to phase 2. We build a flight-capable unit. The project shifted again. The clean room team now worked with aerospace engineers. The goal was no longer just a test bed. It was an engine. They designed a housing, cooling systems, and interfaces for a ship's computer. Throughout all this, the weekly calls with Ambassador Tavik continued. He asked about theoretical breakthroughs. Sumi spoke of interesting energy conservation models and novel approaches to field geometry. She told no lies. She simply spoke a language he did not understand. Tavik was pleased. The humans were theorizing just as a young race should. He filed his reports. Human progress is academic within expected parameters. No indications of practical application. Their focus remains on the abstract point. One day, Jinwoo was in the main hall, updating the mapping data on the Korvax drive out of habit. He noticed something he had missed before. Deep within the crystal lattice near the core was a flaw. A tiny fracture in one of the main power conduits. It was sealed with some sort of resin, a repair. He called Sumi over. Look, they did repair it. Once. Sumi studied the image. It's a clumsy fix. It disrupts the energy flow. See how the glow dims here? This would cause a 5% loss in efficiency at least. They didn't grow a new part, Jinwoo mused. They patched it. Maybe they were in a hurry. Or maybe, he looked at her. Maybe even for them, growing a whole new drive isn't always easy. Maybe this perfect technology has its own problems. It was a small crack in the Korvax image of perfection. It made them seem more real. And it made the human approach, modular, reparable, understandable, seem not just different but stronger. The flight-capable Haiti Mark II took shape. It was larger than the prototype, but still smaller than the Korvax gift. It was designed to be installed, tested, and if needed, fixed. Its casing was stamped with serial numbers and inspection stamps. It was not a treasure. It was a product. As the Mark II was being assembled, Jinwoo often felt a strange feeling. They were standing on the edge of something huge. The Korvax had offered them a place at the bottom of a mountain that had taken them millennia to climb. Humanity had just built a helicopter. He wondered what Tavik would see when he looked down from the mountain top. Would he see ants still climbing? Or would he see something new, something unexpected, rising fast to meet him? The only sound in the vault was the efficient hum of human machinery, building the future one ordinary, brilliant piece at a time. The Haiti Mark II was not beautiful. It was a collection of angular gray modules bolted to a central spine, wrapped in a shell of heat-resistant ceramic. It looked like industrial equipment, which it was. It sat in a new, larger test chamber, this one connected to a vacuum system. The goal was no longer a centimeter. It was a kilometer. The test ship was little more than a frame, a cockpit for a dummy, and the Mark II drive at its core. They called it the Sprinter. It was ugly and functional, just like its engine. The mood in the control room was different now. The first wonder was gone, replaced by a focused intensity. They were not asking if it would work. They were refining how well. Jinwoo watched the final preparations. Remember, he said to the team, this is a stress test. We push it to its limits. We need to know where it breaks before we put a person inside it. Sumi monitored the power flow graphs. The Korvax Model 7 has a safety buffer of 20% before catastrophic failure. Our simulations predict the Mark II has a 35% buffer. We test that prediction today. Director Juan was there, but he stayed quiet. He had become a watcher. This was Jinwoo and Sumi's machine now. The chamber was sealed. The air was pumped out until it was a better vacuum than space itself. On the screens, the sprinter hung in the darkness, illuminated by work lights. Initiate test sequence 1, Jinwoo said. 500-meter jump. Standard power. The Mark II came to life. There was no deep thrum this time, just a sharp, rising whine from the cooling systems. On the main visual, space around the sprinter twisted. It was a violent, brief ripple, like a stone dropped into a pond of reality. Then the ship was simply 500 meters away. The movement was instant. There was no blur, no streak of light. It ceased to be in one place and was in another. Jump complete, a technician said. Power draw within expectations. Structural integrity 100%.
No espelleti merecedu.
Test sequence 2, Jinwoo called out. 1 kilometer. 110% rated power. Again the sharp whine. Again the violent, clean ripple. The ship vanished and reappeared. The data was perfect. They pushed further. They tested rapid sequential jumps. 5 hops of 200 meters each in under 2 seconds. The Korvax drive, according to its manual, needed 10 seconds to restabilize its core between jumps. The Mark II, with its separate, fast resetting modules, had no such delay. It performed the hops like a stone skipping on water. Sumi read the results, her voice rising with excitement. The field recalibration time is negligible. It's not an engine that needs to cool down. It's a tool that can be used again immediately. Finally, they reached the limit test. Prepare for maximum power jump, Jinwoo said. 2 kilometers. 135% of rated power. Engage safety protocols. The whine this time became a scream as the cooling systems fought to keep up. In the vacuum chamber, the ripple of warped space was visible even to the naked eye through the camera. A shimmering sphere that shattered the light for an instant. The sprinter jumped.it reappeared at the far end of the 2-kilometer chamber. For a second, everything seemed fine. Then an alarm blared. Temperature spike in Module 4, a technician yelled. The secondary plasma regulator is overheating. On the screen, a small section on the Mark II's casing was glowing a dull red. Initiate emergency shutdown, Jinwoo ordered, his voice tight. The whine died abruptly. The red glow slowly faded. The ship hung, silent. Structural integrity is holding, Sumi reported, scanning the data. The module contained the failure. It did not spread. The safety buffer was 134.8%. Our simulation was almost perfect. Jinwoo let out a long breath. They had found the breaking point, and more importantly, they had seen how it broke. It broke in one piece in one replaceable box. The rest of the drive was untouched, ready to work again once the bad module was swapped out in the Korvax drive. A similar overload would have likely cracked the crystal lattice. The entire core would have been ruined. A beautiful, expensive total loss. We can fix this, Jinwoo said, turning to Juan. In a day. We have spare modules. This isn't a failure, Director. It's a demonstration of the design. Juan looked from the screen to Jinwoo's face, and then to Sumi's. He saw no despair, only the keen interest of engineers solving a problem. He finally understood the true difference. The Korvax gift was a masterpiece to be preserved. The Haiti was a tool to be used, fixed, and improved. Build the spare part, Juan said, and begin drafting the plans for the Mark III. I want a drive with a 50% safety buffer. As the team got to work, Jinwoo and Sumi retreated to the main hall. They stood before the Korvax drive, its shell still closed. We should send a report, Sumi said quietly, to the United Nations Space Command. We have a functional faster-than-light engine. They need to start designing the ship to go around it. Jinwoo nodded. We send the data, but we keep the drive itself here. And we keep the weekly calls with Tavik. You want to hide it? Sumi asked. I want us to choose the moment, Jinwoo said. Right now, Tavik thinks we are harmless students. That is an advantage. Let's build more than one drive. Let's build 10. Let's have a ship ready. Then, when we finally show him, it will not be a theory. It will be a fact. He thought of the look on Tavik's face. Not anger, perhaps. Not even fear. The look he imagined was simpler, pure, utter confusion. The confusion of someone whose universe has just changed its rules. The report was sent that night. It was a dry, technical document filled with graphs and numbers. It landed in the inboxes of a select few military and scientific leaders. The subject line was simple: Project Haiti. Successful field tests complete. The reaction was not public celebration. It was a wave of quiet, stunned activity. Budgets were redirected. Shipyards received new, strange specifications. A select group of pilots began training on simulators that used flight models no human had ever experienced. And in Taejun, the work continued. The Mark II was repaired in 18 hours. The Mark III was on the drawing board, its specs even more bold. Ambassador Tavik called, as usual. His hologram appeared, serene. We continue to be pleased with your dedication to theory, he said. The path of knowledge is long. It is, Ambassador, Sumi agreed, standing in her usual spot. Every day we learn something new. She did not say that what they were learning was how to leave his people's technology behind. As Tavik's image faded, Jinwoo looked at the closed shell of the ancient gift. He felt no hatred for the Korvax. They had, in their arrogant way, given humanity the greatest gift possible. A challenge. And a target. He turned his back on it and walked toward the clean room, where the next, better engine was taking shape. The sound he left behind was not the silence of a museum, but the busy, ordinary, world-changing sound of human work. Ambassador Tavik arrived at the Taejun facility in person. It was unexpected. His small, sleek shuttle settled on the landing pad without a sound. His visit was labeled a routine diplomatic engagement. But Director Hwan felt a new tension in the air. Had they been discovered? Tavik was led not to an office but directly to the main Starlight Project Hall. His expression was one of polite curiosity. He expected to see the same scene from a year before. Humans circling the sealed, mysterious gift, their instruments poking uselessly at its shell. The doors hissed open. The hall looked different, brighter. The central dais held two objects now. On the left, exactly as he remembered, was the Korvax Model 7 Starlighter. Its smoky crystal shell was seamless, dormant. A perfect black box. On the right was something new. It was smaller, about half the size. The shape was angular, covered in a matte gray ceramic shell. It had panel lines, cooling vents, and small green status lights. It looked functional, industrial, and utterly human. A simple plate on its side read, Haiti Mark III. Tavik stopped walking. His large, dark eyes moved from the familiar shape of his people's technology to the unfamiliar box beside it. His polite smile did not change, but a stillness came over him. Director Hwan stepped forward. Ambassador Tavik, welcome. We have made some progress since your last visit. Progress? Tavik's voice was smooth, but a single note of question hung in the air. He gestured with a slender hand toward the Mark III. And what is this? Our learning aid, Jinwoo said. He stood beside the human drive, his hands calm at his sides. The principles in your manual were very inspiring. We decided to build a model to test our understanding. Tavik's gaze lingered on the human engine. A model? It was too finished, too solid. A physical model? Of the warp field theory? Of a warp field generator, yes, Sumi said. She stood at a console. Would you like to see a demonstration? It is, of course, only a small-scale test. Tavik gave a slow, careful nod. I would be interested. The hall was cleared. Safety shields descended from the ceiling, enclosing the area around the two drives. Only Tavik, Hwan, Jinwoo, and Sumi remained inside. Your gift requires a specific power sequence to activate, Jinwoo explained, speaking as if giving a tutorial. It is a brilliant piece of engineering, but we found the initiation process to be slow for our purposes. He nodded to Sumi. She tapped her console. The Korvax Model 7 hummed to life. Its familiar soft blue glow emanated from within its sealed shell. The hum was deep and musical. On a display screen, a graph appeared, showing the power climb. The line rose in a slow, lazy curve. After 8 seconds, it reached the threshold for a minimal warp bubble. The air around the Korvax drive shimmered gently, beautifully. It held for a moment, then faded. The glow dimmed. A stable, gentle field, Tavik said, a hint of pride returning to his voice. As intended. Now, Jinwoo said, for our simple model. He gave a signal. Sumi pressed a different key. The Haiti Mark III emitted a short, sharp whirr-click. Its green lights flashed once, then turned a steady blue. There was no deep hum. There was no glowing shell. On the display screen, a second graph line appeared. This one shot from the bottom to the top in under a second, a vertical spike. The power draw was a fraction of the Korvax drives. Around the human drive, the air didn't shimmer. It ripped, a visible, brief distortion, like looking through broken glass, snapped into existence and was gone. It was faster, sharper, and far less elegant. But the data on the screen was clear. The human field had been stronger, more focused, and used significantly less energy. It had also formed 10 times faster. Tavik said nothing. He stared at the screen, his eyes fixed on the two graphs, the slow, lazy curve of Korvax technology and the violent, efficient spike of the human machine. Faster initiation. Jinwoo continued, his voice calm and technical. We achieved it by placing the field navigation processors directly adjacent to the emitter. It reduces signal delay. Modular design, Sumi added, as if discussing a simple improvement. She walked to the Mark III and released a latch. A small panel swung open. Inside was a neat grid of identical, box-like units. She pointed to one. If this regulator fails, we remove it and slot in a new one. The drive can be repaired in flight. It improves mission longevity. Tavik finally turned his head from the screen to look inside the open panel. He saw the human logic, not a single grown crystal, but a collection of parts. It was crude. It was also indescribably clever. It was a solution his people had never considered because they had never needed to. The power efficiency, Tavik said slowly, his first technical comment. Your graph shows a 40% improvement. How? Jinwoo shrugged slightly. Your crystal lattice emits photonic energy. Light. It is beautiful, but it is wasted power. We use room temperature superconductors. No waste. No light. Tavik looked back at the Korvax drive, at its soft, beautiful, wasteful glow. For 300 cycles, they had seen that glow as a sign of sophistication. The humans saw it as a leak. The silence in the hall was immense. Tavik was not angry. He was not offended. The expression on his face was one that no human had ever seen on a Korvax before. Complete and utter recalculation. He was reassessing every assumption, every report, every polite, condescending word that he had come to check on a student slowly copying a textbook. He had found the student writing a new, better book in a language he barely understood. Your model, Tavik said, the word feeling strange in his mouth. It is functional? Truly? Director Huan stepped forward. The UNSS Pathfinder, fitted with a Haiti Mark II engine, departed on its first extrasolar test flight to Proxima Centauri yesterday. We received confirmation of its successful jump 12 hours ago. It will return next week. Tavik's composure finally cracked. A faint, almost invisible tremor went through his slender frame. Proxima Centauri, a journey that would take a Korvax scout ship 2 days. A human ship with this ugly box had done it in hours. You hid this, Tavik said, not as an accusation, but as a realization. We studied. Jinwoo corrected gently. You gave us a finished product. We studied the product, but we also studied the idea behind it. And then we built our own idea. Tavik looked from the ancient, beautiful fossil of his people's past to the sleek, ugly tool of humanity's future. The lesson was devastatingly clear. The Korvax Dominion had stopped asking why about their warp drives long ago. They only knew how to use them. Humanity had asked why from the first moment, and in answering, they had found a better how. He straightened his robes, a gesture of returning to formality, but his eyes remained on the human drive. The Dominion will be deeply interested in your findings. This changes things. We look forward to sharing our data, Juan said, his tone diplomatic. As equals. The word hung in the air. Equals. It was not a demand. It was, after today, simply a fact. Tavik left soon after, his quiet dignity intact but his worldview shattered. His report to the Dominion would not speak of slow, predictable humans. It would speak of a species that treated impossible technology not as a sacred artifact, but as a starting point. Back in the hall, the three humans stood alone with the two engines. Will they be angry? Sumi asked. Jin Woo shook his head, looking at the closed door. I don't think so. I think they'll be careful. And I think they'll start looking at their own technology with new eyes. We just gave them 1,000 years' worth of questions. He walked over to the Korvax Model 7 and placed a hand on its cool crystal shell. It was still a marvel. Then he turned to the Haiti Mark III, its status lights blinking a steady, efficient rhythm. The gift had been a wall, meant to keep them in their place. Humanity had used it as a ladder, and they had not just climbed over the wall. They had built a new one, stronger and taller, on the other side. And they had done it not with a shout of defiance, but with the quiet, relentless sound of a better idea.